Hey friends, welcome to today's episode of the Daily Coffee Pro. And today we're going to be talking about, are there too many small businesses in the coffee industry? I'm just going to turn myself up a wee bit there. It's an interesting subject. I am putting together the workshop for this coming weekend, navigating your career and business as a cafe owner. And it is a very interesting situation when you start looking at the data so that you can understand what the situation really is around businesses that are opening and businesses that are closing. I'm a huge fan of data. I have a science background, and so understanding the numbers is important to me particularly if I'm going to be teaching about something. And you hear these myths out there that 90% of cafes and restaurants close within the first 12 months of them opening. Even numbers that people think are low, like 50% of these businesses are closing in the first 12 months of them opening. I looked at these numbers and different blogs were reporting different things. And so I decided to go straight to the source, excuse me, and get the numbers from the American version of the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Excuse me. And that organization over here is called the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's bls.gov. And I decided to analyze the data myself and found some very, very interesting things. Before we jump into the data, I want us to look at this idea of we see through social media, we see that there are so many businesses, coffee businesses that are opening. Every day I'm hearing of a new person that's either opening a new cafe or starting their own roasting brand and putting out a subscription service, opening a farmer's market stall, all that kind of stuff. And for those of us who are entrepreneurs by nature, in the coffee industry, it's both exciting and a little concerning to see so many businesses opening. And I've said this before, I'm a huge fan of competition. I'm not competitive myself, but I am a big fan of the idea of conscious capitalism. And I want the best products to be out there doing well and surviving. I also would like people to find freedom through business ownership, because there is a beautiful sense of freedom that comes with not having to work for somebody else if you've got the skills to be able to do that. My mission, particularly with these cafe owner workshops that we're running and that we will continue to run, is to help people who should be opening businesses have the best shot at being successful. It's also to help people realize that they're either not ready or not the right people to be opening their own business. And if it was up to me, everybody would own their own business. I just think that there's so much to be learnt from having your own business. But it's an expensive endeavor. And as long as people that are doing it can do it without bankrupting themselves, which means if they do bankrupt themselves, that sets their children and their children's children up for difficulties as well. We want to avoid that. Business ownership should be something that enhances your life, even if it's hard. And it is damn fucking hard. Anyone who's done it, no matter how many businesses they've opened, is going to tell you that every pain point you experience, no matter how many businesses you've opened, is there to teach you something. So let's take a look at the data for a second. And if you are coming to the Cafe Owners Workshop this Sunday, we are taking a serious deep dive into these numbers. I've analysed them over the space of over 10 years, so from 1995 to 2017. And we talked about this a little bit on an Instagram live that I did over the weekend. But so here's the way that it breaks down, and it is very different to what you might expect. In 1995, and the numbers that we're talking about here are all recorded at the same time of year. So as at March in 1995, the number of new businesses that had opened in that 12-month period was 604,000 approximately. In 2017, that number was 733,000 approximately. So that's the scope. As you can see from there, we've got more businesses now, more small businesses opening now, and there's been a steady increase, except for after the crash in 2008. So we've reported these numbers in 5-year increments. There's been a steady increase in the number of businesses that have been opening from 1995 to the current day. In the first year, people tend to believe that an astronomical number of businesses close within the first year of business, and that is just simply not correct. It's actually quite fascinating to see how consistent the percentage number is over the space of the time that we analyze the data. And it's pretty much the same no matter how far you extrapolate out the data. But it's an average of 20% of businesses that close within the first 12 months of operation. So if you go into business, the likelihood of you surviving the first year is good. It's 80%. It doesn't mean that you're going to be doing well in the first year. It doesn't mean that you're on the road to success after the first year. It just means that 80% of businesses, this is small businesses across the board, are likely to stay open after their first 12 months. Now, when you break these down by industry, it's actually that food-based industries, food and beverage-based industries actually have slightly better odds than that. So it's somewhere around 17% of those businesses, when you get industry specific, that close within the first 12 months. If we move on to the 3 years, we look at, again, consistent no matter how far you extrapolate the data out, whether it's before 1995 and up until 2017, the data shows that 40% of businesses close after the third year of them being in business. So what that means is obviously 60% of businesses are staying open after they've been in business for 3 years. But I'm guessing if you are closing after 3 years, your first 3 years were pretty shocking. It's hard. It's a hard grind. Everybody knows that the first 3 years are the most brutal that you're going to experience. And so we move on to the 5 years. And here's where I want to say a small caveat here. I want to talk about how we're defining success. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics, much like the equivalent of those organizations around the world that collect this data, define failure as the business closing. Now, if you've got to 3 years and you've closed your business, I'm assuming it's a hard slog up until that point. If you're pushing it beyond 3 years and the first 3 years have been a super hard slog and you can't see it getting any better, I want you to consider whether you should be staying open or not, because a business that doesn't have any hope of surviving has already failed. And an important part of the role that Map It Forward is going to be playing in the industry in many years to come is to help people detach from this idea of, but I don't want to fail. You are not failing. You are, if you close earlier than the 2 years that you thought you should have stayed open when you really should be closing now, we have helped you find success. Closing your business is not a failure. If what you've been focused on the whole time is the important things, how to build a team, how to build a buying philosophy and a selling philosophy, how to cultivate a culture, how to understand who your customers are and build community, real genuine community around that, how to listen to yourself as an owner of a business, how to select product, how to read financial statements, how to manage cash flow, all of these things. If after 3 years of running a business or 4 years of running a business, you have focused on those things, whether you stay open or close is kind of inconsequential. If you have grown and learnt about these things, cutting yourself off the hook or letting yourself off the hook and closing your doors means that you're walking away with a plethora of experience. You're giving yourself some time to breathe, and you can come back and get straight back into business at a future time if you want to. You will, at the very least, be an exceptional employee to somebody after you have been through the pain points of opening and closing your own business. And so now we look at the 5-year statistics. I'm pointing at the screen. If I look like I'm pointing at the camera, I'm pointing at the screen. The 5-year statistics across the board are that 50% of businesses close within on their 5th year of business, which we're getting into some big numbers here. And the 10-year number is pretty consistently 67% of businesses close on their 10th year. And so if we correlate this back to this idea that there are a lot of businesses out there in the coffee world, and surely there's far more businesses than there are customers, right? Well, it's not as simple as that. And we're going to deep dive into that in the workshop to help you dissect that and to position yourself in a really great way. But even though the percentages are pretty consistent, the numbers are not consistent. And so even though we've had 21 or 20% of businesses closing within the first year, because we have more businesses opening from 1995 to 2017, what we're finding is that in 1995, 127,000 businesses closed in the first year, but 147 businesses closed within the first year in 2017. And so that's why we're starting to see a huge number of businesses closing, because they are we have more businesses opening, first of all. So that's why the first year number has increased astronomically, in my opinion. I think that's a lot of businesses to be closing within their first year of business. And we want to avoid that. Secondly, I think that the reason is because people are not realizing how hard it is to actually run a business. And so if you want to know the intricacies of how to do that and how to set yourself up, and most importantly, how to walk away with knowing the important questions to ask yourself about running your business, whether this weekend we're specifically talking about cafes, but this also applies to roasters. These numbers apply to roasters as much as they apply to cafe owners. But if you're a cafe owner and you would like to know more about this, sign up for our workshop that's happening on Sunday. Head to mapitforward.org/events and join us. Elliot Renecki, who is a client of mine, is going to be joining me for this workshop, and it's a webinar. We took Elliot from his first iteration of his cafe to the second iteration of his cafe, which is my favorite cafe in the country, both from a coffee perspective and from a design and customer service, etc. And now Elliot's opening up a co-roasting facility that's attached to that. We've got a plan. He and his business partners are doing a great job at executing on their plan. We're going to talk a lot about the idea of planning for success in this workshop. So if you are going to be around, please sign up. You'll have a month to watch the video and ask questions throughout that whole time. So it's like getting free consulting from me for a month. So mapitforward.org/events and sign up. Peace, love, and peanut butter, everybody, and have an amazing day. Be kind to each other.